do it, meaning take the minutes?
Well, we could do that too. I was thinking call the roll, but I guess we should. Okay.
I'm happy to call the roll.
Recording in progress.
Okay, I've started recording, so you can start the meeting.
Okay. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Midcoast Community Council for February 23rd, 2022. Greg, would you please call the roll?
Jill.
Yes.
Claire.
Yes, here.
Michelle.
Here.
Dave.
Here.
Dan.
Here.
Greg, here. Len. We're still waiting.
Thank you. So we have a quorum. I'd like to start with the reports from government officials, starting with, I think, Alina is definitely here. Would you please start, Lena?
Yeah, thanks. And if you hear loud banging in the background, there's a handyman fixing my garbage disposal. No one's getting beat up. It's okay. So my first update is on COVID. I'm just going to read it directly from the update that the board got yesterday. So as you likely heard last week, California issued a smarter plan for the next phase of the statewide COVID-19 response that acknowledges that the virus will remain with us for some time, and that we are in a place of needing to hone our defenses as the virus evolves. We also heard last week that the CDC will update its guidance on face coverings soon. The level of virus transmission remains high, but has come down considerably from an early January peak, with our 7-day lagged case rate average reported by the state at 34 cases per 100,000 compared to 49 a week ago. This is an average of 265 new COVID cases per day compared to 382 cases per day last week. Since our 7-day peak of 239 cases per 100,000 on January 8th, our case rate has declined by 86%. Our current case activity keeps us in the CDC's high level of community transmission, and our test positivity rate countywide of 5.1%, and in the healthy equity quartile of 7.3%. So these are all declining numbers. And on Friday, the census of hospitalized COVID-19 patients was 48, with a downward trend visible over the past couple of weeks. The number of residents we are serving in the hotel that offers safe isolation has decreased to under 25 in the last several days. I also just want to let you know I've got a lot more data in my written report, but the county is planning some changes to the county-run vaccine clinics that are going to begin next week, that are going to hopefully increase engagement with the 5 to 11-year-old group, which is the group that we've had the lowest turnout with. And then my other updates are relatively quick. The off-leash dog program, the pilot, was asked about. So just an update from Nicholas Calderon. Basically, they're going to have to go back to the Board of Supervisors and separate Quarry from Pillar, and they're just going to go forward with Quarry Park for the pilot. And I'm not exactly sure what that timeline is going to look like, but I'll let you know as it gets updated. So that's the park's plan, is to move forward with Quarry Park only for now. At the last meeting, or the meeting where Supervisor Horsley was at, there was a request for lead testing at the airport on the 10th of February. The supervisor reached out to the Department of Public Works and requested that lead testing. We have not heard back yet, but I'm excited to see that on the agenda today. And then lastly, there was a really interesting presentation at the board yesterday of the park's wildfire fuel management plan. It was really helpful for me to see, and I will include a link to the attachments for that presentation. And then once the actual video of that presentation is up, I think that's probably what's most informative, and I'll share that with you. But those are all my updates for today, and I am happy to take some questions.
Okay. Thank you very much, Lena. Harvey?
Okay. I have a number of updates, which I mostly relate to equity concerns. I'm a member of the age-friendly task force, and the city council has approved a application to the AARP to make not just Half Moon Bay, but the entire coast side an age-friendly community. And we anticipate very soon to be approved as an age-friendly community. We're going to have a number of initial projects as part of that effort. I think one of the things that probably most will affect the Midcoast is our project to have a coastside healthcare access advocacy committee. I'm sure you all know that healthcare is a real concern on the coast. We've had a number of clinics that have come and gone, not just seniors, but everybody is affected by that. And this committee is going to be meeting to assess what we can do. We're going to try to access healthcare providers, Kaiser, Sutter, to see if we can actually reinstate some of the healthcare clinics that we used to have. And if nothing else, we're talking about making it easier to have healthcare transportation over the hill to Sequoia and Sutter and Mills Peninsula. So that is coming, and I'm looking forward to it. One of the projects that I'm hoping to get installed will be to extend the boundaries of the Sequoia Healthcare District to the coast side. I know that Don Horsley in the past has indicated that he's in favor of doing that. Can you turn the light on? Sound? A couple of other updates. ALAS, I'm sure you all know about that organization, has got permission to buy a Equity Express bus that's being outfitted. It's going to be able to go to the farm workers on the coast. It's going to have private health places for farm workers to get health care, Wi-Fi, English as a second language access. And that's going to be a private public joint project. It's going to be expensive initially, but it will be funded by Genentech, among other companies. And it sounds like a really wonderful thing to take care of some of the farm workers who really are the backbone of the coast side. Lastly, last Friday, we had a march for fair housing, for better equitable rents that marched down from the ALAS headquarters to MacDutra Plaza. We've had a lot of discussion about trying to get more affordable housing for farm workers, for restaurant workers, for all the service providers that have unfortunately been forced out of some of the housing on the coast side. The city council is very concerned about it. It's a really incredibly difficult problem. One of the things we're trying to do is to have a request for quotations on 555 Kelly, which the city owns, and could become a location for affordable housing that the city could partially subsidize. So we're looking forward to that. There's some land near Wavecrest that Post currently owns, and the city is going to be working to get that to become farm worker affordable housing. That's another step that we're taking. We're working on finding out what we can do about putting affordable housing at 880 Stone Pine. That might be very challenging, but we're going to see what's available. So the city is really concerned with equity, with trying to help some of the workers on the coast side. It's not easy, but we're trying. I'll be glad to answer any questions. And if anybody has any ideas, please feel free to pipe up. Thank you.
Thank you, Harvey. Any comments or questions? Thank you. I see that Len is with us, and I think, Len, you had a question for Lena, I think, maybe. You're on mute.
Got it. Yes, the question concerned the status of the wildfire coordinator position.
Oh, right. I'm sorry. I forgot that you asked me for that. So his name is Brian Kelly. I met him on Thursday of last week. I'm meeting him again tomorrow, and I'm happy to facilitate introductions.
Great. So he's just started.
Yeah, he's just started. My meeting tomorrow is my meeting last week was for him to meet the supervisor, and my meeting this week is to onboard him.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Thanks, Lena. Any other representatives of any other group, government group present that wants to report anything? Anybody here from RCD?
No, Sheena couldn't make it tonight, but I'm happy to give her update.
Okay, please do.
Okay, so as part of the El Granada scoping project, we had another committee or team meeting for the representatives from the different county offices, and I'm representing the MCC on that. That meeting was, I believe, a week ago Friday. In that meeting, we really just heard an update from Panorama, who's in charge of the project, on the data that they had collected. And throughout the last month or so, they were collecting data that will help them do their modeling. And so they just summarized the data that was collected. In addition, we heard some concerns that were raised by both people on the group, especially Danny Turwey, who's a representative from El Granada, and then questions that were raised by Len and Greg as part of the wildfire subcommittee on the MCC, especially related to the modeling that's going to be done. And so we do have a follow-up meeting that will include myself, Sheena, and Hannah from Parks. That's still to be scheduled, but it'll probably happen next week, or if not the week after. We're still trying to align everyone's schedule, but we'll be talking in more depth about the modeling that Vibrant Planet, which is like kind of a subcontractor of Panorama, is going to be doing, and get more details on that and raise any issues that have come up.
I think it looks like there are a couple of questions. Greg, I think, was first. I'm not sure.
I just want to attend that meeting on the simulation and the modeling. Is there a problem with that?
It's meant for only those on the committee. It's just the three of us right now. I can raise that with Gina and see if she'd be open to that.
Okay, please do.
Len?
I'd raise a similar question asking if Danny Turway could attend as well. So maybe you could ask for both of them.
Yeah, I think since Danny is on the committee, he can attend. I'll follow up with Sheena on both of those requests.
Great, thanks.
Okay. Anyone else with a report or a question?
Yeah, I have a question for Michelle.
Okay, go ahead.
So recently, we know that some of the trees were blown down at some of the medians, but also discovered many, maybe 40 or more trees blew down in Quarry Park. And question is, has there been some discussion about that at all? And are they going to leave the trees down, or are they going to chip and clean up and what has fallen? It's a mess.
Yeah, so I believe that wind event that caused those trees to fall happened right before the community meeting that took place in late January. And that did come up at that meeting. And, in terms of understanding that there are trees that are older and that are, susceptible to falling due to wind or other extreme weather. So that definitely came up. As for whether anything is going to be done to remove the trees, that would be outside of the scope of the scoping project, because the scoping project is just to look at the future, and it's especially related to wildfire. I think that would be a separate request from county parks to see if they can do work to clean up the damage from those fallen trees.
Well, I would think it would be an item on wildfire prevention to, just to have good maintenance in the park. I would think it would be part of the scope, because it's probably going to happen in the future as well.
Yeah, I mean, looking at how that impacts the wildfire risk would be within the scope. Just cleaning it up right now, I mean, no action is going to be taken immediately as part of the scoping project. I guess the item of sufficient maintenance should be part of the scoping, I would guess.
It also sounds like something I know that some people on the council are working with the Quarry Park Master Plan and other issues related to Quarry Park with parks, and that may be something we want to bring up with them as well.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Sure. Greg, do you have your hand up?
Well, I just wanted to answer Dan. I mean, I hiked that Quarry Park a day or two after the trees blew down. The thing that's relevant for the scoping project is it was an easterly wind. I counted 33 trees knocked down, and I only hiked the lower trails. And the first day I got there, they were already cutting them up. I pointed out to I'll call them rangers, the parks employees on site, a couple of 30-inch diameter trees. And the second time I hiked, it was a week later, and they cut through everything. Now, they hadn't chipped it up. There's a lot of timber in those 33 trees. But I don't see this as an issue for the scoping project, except for the direction of the wind. Okay, it's really a parks maintenance issue. And I wrote to Nick about the issues, and it seems to me that he was attending to it as, in a reasonably expeditious manner.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Michelle. We'll move on now to public comment, and we're open for comments of up to 3 minutes on anything not on the formal agenda. So what is on the agenda is a report from Mid-Peninsula Regional Open Space Projects about some of the things they're working on, a request to the county to study lead impacts at the airport, and some internal expenditures for the MCC that we'll be considering. So anything other than those things that you'd like to comment on, please, this is your time. I don't see anybody. Okay, we'll move on then to any announcements from any council members about upcoming events they want us to be aware of. Okay. move on to the consent agenda, which includes minutes from the last few meetings. I think these are going to be removed from removed entirely from our agenda tonight. Is that correct?
Well, removed from the consent agenda, but I will address them by moving it to the end of the regular agenda.
Okay, so you don't want to just withdraw them all. You want for us to consider them later?
Right.
Okay, so we'll do that. So we're moving into the actual agenda. The first item on the agenda is a report from Mid-Peninsula Regional Open Space District, which I'm saying all of the words to because I don't want there to be any confusion with the Mid-Penn housing people, totally separate group. And we're happy to welcome them here tonight to tell us about some of their exciting new projects. Tina Hug, I think, is going to be spearheading this. Welcome.
Thank you very much for having us and distinguishing us from the Mid-Penn housing folks who we do get mixed up with sometime as well as Post. So thank you. We are really happy to be here tonight. There are a number of us on this call, Scott Reeves and Aaron Peth and Tyler Smith and Gretchen Lausen. We're the project managers for the 3 projects that we're going to present to you today. And what we hope to do is go through our presentations and have time left at the end for any questions you may have. These are going to be high-level overviews, so we'll try to be quick about it because we know we don't have a lot of time tonight. And just as you know us, we're a public agency and we were founded in 1972. And just so everyone knows, we're celebrating our 50th anniversary this year. So be on the lookout for events that we're going to be holding throughout the year. I think our public affairs department has some fun activities planned for the duration of this entire year. It does sound like I am not sharing my screen, so that is not helpful. Let me go ahead and do that.
Yeah, you should have permission.
All right. Let me know if you see it.
Yes,
we see it.
Okay. We didn't really miss anything. It was just the introduction. So that was the first slide, and this is the second. So we're going to continue on into the meat of the presentation. We're going to focus on Percival Creek tonight, but as you know, Mid-Penn's boundaries are pretty extensive. We go from San Carlos down to Los Gatos and from the coast to the bay. And it's about 65,000 acres of land we've preserved in the mountains, foothills, and open spaces. And we have about 26 preserves. And our focus again is Percival Creek, right up there at the top where the star is. And it's one of our larger preserves. It's about 5,400 acres in size, and it goes from Highway 35 to Highway 1. And it is one of our more popular preserves. It has the redwoods, the creeks, views to the ocean. The multimodal access study is the project that looks at the entire preserve and the 4 access points and informs the 2 other projects, the Highway 35 project and the Persimmon to the Sea Trail project. So there are 4 entrances, main entrances. The 2 that have parking lots, built parking lots are North Ridge and the Percival Creek Road parking lot. And we've got a couple trailhead entrances as well. Our project will inform the remaining 2 projects, the 2 that I just mentioned. And what we're going to do is start off with the Highway 35 project. So I'm going to turn this presentation over to Scott and Aaron. Thanks.
Thanks, Tina. And before Aaron starts, I'm actually going to have to peel away for our board meeting. I have an item coming up. So I just wanted to say hi to everybody. And I will turn it to Aaron, who's going to run our portion of the presentation.
Perfect. Thanks, Scott, and thanks, Tina, for running through that. Good to see everyone here tonight. My name is Aaron Peth. I'm a planner with MidPenn and one of the co-leads for this project alongside Scott in engineering and construction, and then Tyler Smith, who's also on this call, who helps us out. So Tina kind of showed you a overview of where this project is, and just to see it again right here, this project takes place at our Northridge parking lot in Parissima Creek Redwood. That's if you've ever driven along Skyline Boulevard, it's a northern of our two parking lots there in Parissima, and it's also the larger kind of gravel one versus the other one's more of a pull out. So that's kind of general location of this project, but really what kind of spawns it to be a project we're looking at, this feasibility study, is the fact that it's surrounded by this really extensive trail network in the area, both existing and planned. So this map shows some of that with the Bay to the Sea Trail, the Parissima to the Sea Trail that you're going to hear about more tonight. Both those are undergoing planning and still in the planning phase. And then there's also in pink here, the Bay Area Ridge Trail, which is existing in Parissima Creek Redwoods, and it's also planned along SFPUC's land on the east side of the highway here. And it's really that planned connection there that SFPUC is planning to construct that really formed and started the need for this project here. So with SFPUC's trail coming in, right now it's planned to be kind of just an out and back trail for the interim period. And so we were, that kind of spawned the idea of, connecting their planned trail so that it can connect to the existing trail network we have in Parissima. So that would require us to look at a trail crossing of Skyline Boulevard in this location, as well as we're looking at an expansion of the parking area, the Northridge parking area, to accommodate increased users based on this project. And it is a project that we're leading, but we also have a lot of help in this partnership from Peninsula Open Space Trust Post, as well as SFPUC and the Bay Area Ridge Trail Council. And then next slide, please, Tina. Thank you. So this is just another picture there for folks who might not be as familiar with where this parking lot is. The pictures 1, 2, and 3 show the general location of this parking area and what Skyline looks like in that location. It's kind of actually one of the rare spots where there's somewhat of a straightaway on Skyline there. And also in the bottom left-hand corner there, that shows what our parking lot currently looks like. There you can see kind of this gray gravel strip there. That's our existing parking lot, and then there's this grassy field that's currently in that Google image overview is showing up as overflow parking. It's used for some Kings Mountain Art Fair up there, so that's kind of one of the days there. But this shows the general location of where we're looking at this at-grade crossing, as well as the parking lot expansion. Next slide, please, Tina. Thank you. So this feasibility study is really a collection of a whole different slew of surveys and other studies we're doing to help inform this preliminary design of the parking lot, the crossing itself, the trail crossing of Skyline, and any spur trail connection needs that would be on the east side of the highway to connect to the trail that SFPUC is working on, that Ridge Trail extension there. And so the two components that we're doing all these studies for are, as I mentioned, are that trail crossing and the expansion of the Northridge parking lot. And with this study, we're looking at things like topographical surveys, cultural resources surveys, bio surveys, as well as a traffic study to look at, where we can put this crossing in, where's the safest spot, as well as what improvements are needed to make that safe. And that really all goes goes and funnels into this preliminary design. That'll be kind of the end result of our feasibility study. To be determined as kind of later phases are project permitting, environmental review, as well as implementation and eventual construction. And that's all TBD for now, because the feasibility study portion of this project is funded. That was funded by our partners there, that combination of SFPUC, Post, and Bay Area Ridge Trail Council. So we don't have a funding source identified for the next phases there. So that's why we have that to be determined date of next steps. And next slide, please, Tina. So just to finish off, this is a map showing this project location, just to put it in context of where these feasibility studies are really occurring. The two spots in pink there are where we're looking at for the parking area expansion, just seeing, doing all those surveys and studies in that area to take a look at it. The gray strip there is our existing lot, and then the yellow strip along the roadway, that's what our kind of extent of our looking at this traffic study for the crossing improvements and kind of what that'll look like. And then on the east side there, that's what we're looking at for any connections to the purple trail. That's SFPUC's planned trail there. And right now we are kicking off these studies. The traffic studies begun, and then the next steps that are going to be happening in the spring is we're going to be kicking off some of the surveyor work, as well as the bio surveys and the cultural resources surveys. So with that, that's a really high-level overview of this Highway 35 project, and I will pass it to Gretchen to talk about the Paris to the Sea feasibility study. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Gretchen Louston. I'm also a planner with MidPenn and the project manager for the Purissima to the Sea Trail and Parking Area project. Thanks again for having us tonight to share information about these ongoing Purissima projects. Next slide. The Purissima to the Sea project was identified as a community priority during MidPenn's vision plan process and the subsequent Measure AA bond that was approved in 2014. So with this project, MidPenn intends to realize the decades-long vision to connect the Santa Cruz Mountains to the Pacific Ocean. So this map shows an overview of the project area. The Purissima to the Sea Trail is envisioned to be a roughly 15-mile regional trail connecting the Bay Area Ridge Trail to the California Coastal Trail. This new trail will also support the vision of another regional trail whose planning is being led by Peninsula Open Space, known as the Bay to Sea Trail. And the Bay to Sea Trail will encompass 40 miles of continuous east-west regional trail connecting the San Francisco Bay to the ocean. A conceptual Purissima to the Sea Trail connection is shown here in that purple dashed arrow. The Bay Area Ridge Trail alignment is shown in peach along Highway 35, and the Coastal Trail is shown in orange. And the yellow lines show the existing trail network within the Purissima Preserve that may become part of the Purissima to the Sea Trail. Next slide. So this map shows the focused project area and the project elements that are currently being evaluated as part of the Purissima to the Sea feasibility study. So the dashed purple line here shows the general area that's being evaluated for the trail alignment. And the small purple circles show two separate areas that are being evaluated for parking and a trailhead. There's a small site on the east side of Verde Road. And then there is a larger area that's west of Verde and east of Highway 1. So the project will analyze opportunities also for connector trails and roadway crossings of Verde Road and Highway 1 to ultimately connect to the existing Cowell-Parissima parking area along Highway 1. Next slide. The Parissima to the Sea project will be a multi-year project. And right now we're in this phase 1, the feasibility study. So also as part of this feasibility study, similar to the Northridge parking area, we've completed a range of technical studies and an opportunities and constraints analysis. Currently, conceptual parking area designs are being developed. Following the feasibility study, the district will conduct an environmental review of the proposed project, followed then by design development, permitting, and finally construction. Public engagement has been and will continue to be a key component of this feasibility study. So staff have been soliciting public input through meetings with neighbors and the agricultural community, preserve users, as well as the general public. There will be continued outreach and opportunities for the public to provide input during this feasibility study phase and each of the upcoming phases as well. Next slide. Few photos of the site. The upper left shows the area between Highway 1 and Verde Road that's being evaluated for parking. The top right shows the second smaller area that's being evaluated, and that's the site to the east of Verde Road. And then the two lower photos are taken from an existing ranch road within the project area and just the adjacent hillside area, showing really just the spectacular views that will be provided by this future trail. Next slide. In December of last year, we presented our initial findings from this feasibility study, including the key planning considerations identified in the opportunities and constraints analysis. We presented this information to the Mid-Penn Board of Directors and the public. Next slide. The opportunities and constraints were grouped into 4 different categories: physical, cultural, biological, and safety. And tonight I'm just going to kind of run through a really high level overview of those findings, and I'll just highlight 1 or 2 key attributes in each category. So this graphic here shows those physical attributes, and they include land ownership. So Mid-Penn now owns contiguous property at this site that allows an opportunity for a completion of this regional trail, all the way from within the existing trail network, all the way out to Highway 1, and could also provide an opportunity to develop a new parking area. Also, as part of this study, the district is working to identify those potential connector trail locations. So the trails linking a new parking area all the way to the existing Cowell-Parissima parking area. And so we'll be determining whether additional land rights may be needed for those elements as well. Site access here too. The study includes the evaluation of these 2 parking areas along Verde Road. And due to the low vehicle speeds along Verde Road, it offers a safe approach to a driveway entrance for this new parking area. Next slide. Cultural attributes of the site include the existing grazing operation that is on the property, as well as the adjacent farmlands. So project planning will aim to balance these existing agricultural uses with future recreation to minimize potential conflicts. And then there's also an opportunity here to interpret these cultural attributes, including the agriculture, as well as other aspects of the site's ecology and cultural heritage. Next slide. Typical with many or all of our district's preserves, There are biological attributes at each of these sites, and the overall site here does contain sensitive habitats, protected waters, and potential habitat for special status species. So these attributes are key planning considerations, and the project will need to be designed in a site-sensitive manner that avoids or minimizes impacts to these natural systems and habitats. Next slide. And trail and roadway safety are key considerations. So balancing the vehicle and pedestrian safety within and adjacent to the proposed parking areas, as well as the connector trails and roadway crossings are going to be really important. Making sure that there's adequate line of sight distance for any roadway crossings, and whether there's the potential need for parking restrictions or signage along roadways will need to be factored into the proposed design. Emergency access is another safety attribute. So to further promote trail safety, ensuring that there's adequate emergency access, this will be considered and incorporated into the project design. We'll also consider adequate trail width for firefighting access, additional access needs of our rangers and maintenance staff, and a potential new emergency landing zone location. Next slide. So this map shows several potential trail alignment options that have been identified to connect the future parking area at Verde Road to the existing trail system within the preserve. Alignment options were initially developed using topo data and satellite imagery, and then they were ground truth in the field. And staff considerations in this process include constructability, long-term sustainability and maintenance, regulatory requirements for sensitive habitats, and compliance with MidPenn's coastal service plan. Also, trail construction costs and the quality of the visitor experience. So currently there are 3 trail alignment options that are being evaluated. You can see them here in the purple, red, and white. And then these options will then meet up with a proposed trail alignment that runs along Lovitos Creek and then connects to Irish Ridge, the existing trail within the preserve. And that's that yellow segment there as well. So this map is really just showing those general areas that are under evaluation for each of these potential alignments. Staff has also initiated feasibility planning for the connector trails to the Cowell-Parissima parking area. So at this time, we're looking at 2 potential alignments. The first one, they both travel north from the parking area up along Verde Road. The first one climbs upslope in an eastward direction and provides views of the coast before returning downslope to connect with the existing post easement. And the second route really provides that direct and shorter route paralleling Verde Road to connect with the post easement. As this work continues, development of a recommended alignment will consider minimizing social trails, efficient routing of trail users to discourage users from using Verde Road itself, and providing a positive visitor experience. Next slide. So moving forward in this feasibility study, we'll be focusing on completing additional technical assessments and continuing trail scouting of the trail alignment alternatives, developing draft conceptual parking design alternatives, and continuing to conduct additional public and stakeholder outreach. We anticipate presenting a preferred trail alignment and draft conceptual parking area alternatives at a public meeting in late spring. Thank you very much. And I'm going to turn it back to Tina now.
Thanks, Gretchen. I think Tyler and I are ready to give you an overview of our project, the multimodal access study that's going to support the 2 projects that you've already heard about. As you already can tell, Prisma is rather remote, and it's pretty far from transit centers and urban areas. So generally people take their cars to get there, and the demand can cause some issues and traffic congestion around the entrance points, which can be really frustrating for visitors because they can't find a place to park, and it can be frustrating for neighboring properties as well. This is the close-up of the preserve map and all the existing trail network within the preserve. As I mentioned, there are the 4 trailhead entrances, the North Ridge entrance where the Highway 35 project is occurring. Verde is off the screen to the left. We have Prisma Creek Road. This entrance is Grabtown Gulch, and this is Redwood Trail. So those are our main entrances. As you know from Aaron and Scott's presentation, the North Ridge lot is the main lot. It has about 30 spaces. It gets full quite quickly. The second lot is the one on the west on Prisma Creek Road. It's small, about 7 spaces and an ADA spot, and some visitors also park on the road. We've worked recently with San Mateo County to remove some of the parking spaces so that we don't have cars damaging the shoulders or slipping into the creek. Both parking lot and the roadside parking reaches capacity pretty quickly as well. It is the most desired location for folks who want to hike up into the redwoods or go up into the preserve and back down. The multimodal access study is looking at ways to ease and better manage the traffic and visitation, and to utilize our parking as best we can. We know it's going to be very popular. So we've been tasked to understand our visitors, where they come from, where they like to hike, how long they like to stay, which entrances they prefer, so that we can attack this problem with some informed, some data and information. We'll evaluate the parking areas that we have. We'll see how they intersect with the future parking lot, as well as the Highway 35 improvements, and we'll hopefully move a number of efforts forward to help address some of the issues that this preserve faces on high demand days. So with that, I'll turn this over to Tyler, who's going to give some more detail on what we've been doing since last summer.
Thank you, Tina. Yeah, so the multimodal access study is looking at creative ways to ease and better manage Prisma's parking and traffic issues, since we know the preserve is going to continue to be popular. And we'll evaluate the existing parking in trailhead areas, look at how and when people get to the preserve, where they come from, how long they stay, and so on. Next slide. Early survey results and field observations have confirmed that demand is highest during weekend mornings, and demand is highest at the North Ridge and Prisma Creek Road parking lots. The 2 photos on the left are the Prisma Creek Road parking lot and nearby roadside parking. And people average about 2 hours at the preserve, and there appears to be frequent turnover. Prisma Creek is popular at a regional level, with visitors coming from all over the Bay Area and beyond. Visitation is highest from the surrounding zip codes, as well as Bayside and Peninsula communities. This data here is based on those who share their zip code during the visitor survey. From the vehicles we observed parked at the preserve, we see that people come from as far away as San Joaquin and Stanislaus counties. In addition, the survey has found the majority of people use a vehicle to get to the preserve, whether they are driving alone or carpooling. This is probably because the preserve is very remote and there are limited ways for people to get there. What is interesting, when we looked at the vehicles in the field, we saw more people actually carpooled than drove alone. which leads us to believe that people are aware of the parking challenges. The rate of carpooling didn't decrease from weekend to weekday. Most carpool trips were 2 people to a vehicle. If parking was not an issue, people would prefer to park at the lower end of the preserve, which makes sense because people would probably prefer to hike up and return coming down. This area also features a nice creek trail situated below the towering redwoods. When asked whether respondents had any problems getting to the preserve or finding parking during any of their recent visits, we found their difficulties centered around driving and parking and limited transit access. Other means of access were viewed as not readily available or safe. We asked visitors what they thought would improve their experience getting to and enjoying the preserve. It's no surprise that their ideas centered around cars. There did appear to be interest in a free or low-cost shuttle. I'll turn the presentation back over to Tina.
Thanks, Tyler. So at this point, we're taking a look at several categories of transportation demand management strategies for improving the access to the preserve and managing the visitation. We'll be looking at improving wayfinding, exploring shuttles, expanding the parking capacity, managing demand, improving bicycle infrastructure, and other measures. We'll be presenting these strategies and these measures to our Planning and Natural Resources Committee on March 15th. So we welcome you all to attend to learn more specifically about the TDM measures, after which we're going to continue with additional engagement and outreach to get more feedback on the measures before we start prioritizing. And we'll continue coordinating with our 2 project teams, and we'll be sending out another survey as well. And so with that, we'll conclude with inviting you to sign up for updates. If you'd like to monitor all 3 projects, so you'd sign up for the preserve updates on our website. And here is our contact information if you would like to reach any one of us on the projects. And with that, thank you. We'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Claire, you're on mute.
Okay, you missed my sparkling comments. Thank you, all of you. That was very interesting. I think there's a lot that we can learn, not just about your project, but about how people approach something like this. This is an informational agenda item, so we're not going to need to save time for council deliberations. I'll open it to questions or comments from either the community or the council. And I think Len has his hand up first.
Yes, thank you. Thanks very much for the presentation. I noticed at several places you have parking lots that are involved with crossing one of the state highways, 35 or Highway 1. And we're always quite interested in that, as we have quite a bit of issues in crossing Highway 1 here in the Midcoast. My question is, on those crossings, do you have any places where you have some type of a electronic signal light to the drivers that are crossing is in process?
I can just jump in first regarding the Parisima to the Sea and future crossing of both Verde Road and Highway 1. And those elements will be something that we are considering. We'll certainly be coordinating with Caltrans and the county very closely to see what elements they desire to see at these locations.
So are you saying you may have a need for it, but you haven't determined that yet, whether to have something more than just a static caution sign?
Yeah, at this point in the project, this early in the feasibility study, we are just now starting to think about those crossings.
Okay, so I'll try to follow up by email, but that's very good. Thank you.
Dan.
Yes, thank you so much for the presentation. And this trail, Prisma Creek Redwoods, is something, it's a place that I like to enjoy on a regular basis. In regards to the, and you guys are doing just a fantastic job. Thank you. In regards to the crossings, I'm not certain, like in today's level of traffic, if an underpass study, pedestrian underpass crossing is appropriate. At this day and age, it may be, but my question is, has it been considered? And also with the benefits of wildlife crossing, it's my understanding that wildlife tend to find, tend to use pedestrian tunnels that are also used by humans. And so I guess just wanted to see if you have any thoughts on that, any considerations of a study for a pedestrian underpass at this location. I have another question, but I'll
just jump in again really quickly that this isn't the first time that we've heard those comments. And again, we're just starting to take a look at, first and foremost, just the potential locations of these crossings. So we haven't started to evaluate, different crossing designs at all, but this is certainly something that we have heard. And we anticipate that this initial feasibility study, there may be recommendations for additional studies like wildlife corridor and pedestrian undercrossing as well.
Okay, great.
Yeah, we'll come back to your second question, Dan. That's okay. Go to Kimberly next.
I'm sorry. You're going to come back to my.
I'll come back for your second question. I'll come back to your second question. We'll let Kimberly and a couple other people go first.
Thanks, Claire. It's a very interesting presentation. Thank you. I'm a local resident who uses a lot of these trails and frequents this area. And I guess I have a couple of things. And by the way, I came in the middle of the presentation, so I could have missed some things. But regarding parking areas, I guess what I'd want to know is, are you planning dirt or gravel parking areas as opposed to paved parking areas to mitigate runoff from cars? My preference would be for a more environmentally friendly type of parking area as opposed to a paved one. And then I have concerns about overdevelopment. There was a lot of stuff mentioned here, and there seems to be a push for overdeveloping many of our spaces these days. And I'd like to just register that concern. And then lastly, the gentleman who talked about the data said something about carpooling as a negative. And I actually thought that we should be encouraging carpooling as opposed to encouraging more cars. Certainly we want visitors to be able to access these areas, but I think there is a limit to how many vehicles we can accommodate, and we shouldn't feel like we have to accommodate, as many as we can cram in. I think there is value to limiting it to some point and encouraging carpooling. Thank you.
I think I'll just quickly respond to the carpooling. I don't think we meant to say that was negative. It's actually a great thing, and it was a nice thing to learn from our surveys that so many people were carpooling already, and we hope to encourage more of that.
Michelle, and then back to Dan.
Yeah, I don't have a question per se. I just wanted to comment and thank you for coming. I met Tina at a farmer's market in Half Moon Bay a few months ago, and she expressed her interest in presenting to the MCC. So I'm glad we were able to find time for you. And yeah, I love the Prisma Creek Redwoods. It's probably the most, the place that as my family visits the most. I just put up this virtual background of a photo that I took on a hike there. And I'm just so glad to see that you're making improvements to it. We always struggle to find parking, and with two young kids, don't want to walk along the road for a long time. I mean, I think that what you're doing in terms of improving the parking and increasing access and expanding, eventually all the way to the sea is going to be really amazing. So thank you.
Dan and then Dave.
Yes, so my second question was regarding lighting. I don't know if there's any need for any lighting, but if there is, if there will be any lighting, the question is, will it address the concerns of responsible lighting by the International Dark Sky Association, as well as the American Medical Association, Sierra Club, Audubon Association, the Society, the Astronomical Society as well. So I'm thinking that will not be much lighting needed, but if there was, can you just respond with your thoughts of any concerns with lighting?
I'll just state that generally our preserves and parking areas are open sunrise to sunset. And so we don't typically provide lighting in those areas with those hours. If there were a different situation, we would certainly evaluate the need for those special standards for lighting, as obviously we're concerned with the sensitive habitat areas.
Great, and if there's any concrete work, I'm expecting that it would be any concrete colored, natural with natural coloring added to blend with the environment of the area.
Yeah, those considerations will certainly be taken into account.
Thank you very much.
Dave.
Hi, again, not really a question similar to Michelle. I've been following this trail since the early days of its concept, and I'm really happy to see it. I've hiked out to Bald Knob there and down the old ranch road a number of times. So I'm hoping this is built sometime in my hiking lifetime. And I'm really happy that you came out to talk to us, and we have reviewed various plans that MidPenn is part of. So anytime you guys want to come out and present on coastal aid projects, I'm sure we would be happy to accommodate you. Thanks.
I have a quick question. I'm slightly disoriented by the map, but I think you're in the general vicinity as you come out to the sea of the Tudatus Creek Park that's just being finalized by the county. Is that true? How close are you to that?
I believe Tudatus Creek is somewhere in this area. Is that right, Gretchen? I feel like we were looking at it at one point. What's within 10 minutes, I thought.
You know what? I am not sure by this map. I feel like it is farther south. It is past.
Are we talking about the beach?
Yeah, Tyler, you were looking at it.
Yeah, it is farther south. I think it's, I don't remember, probably maybe like 5 miles south of here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, was that like a 10-minute drive, depending how fast you drive?
Okay, I was hoping that maybe there would be a way to link this up with that as well, but it sounds like it's a little bit of a distance. Okay. Anybody else with some questions or comments? If not, we'll thank you very much for coming and telling us about this. We do like to keep up with it and really appreciate your time. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Take care.
The next topic on the agenda is regarding, I'll give a little bit of explanation, then I'll turn it over to Michelle. Last time, I think it was the last meeting we met with Don Horsley, and he said that if we requested, he would make sure that the county studied the issues regarding lead fuel at the airport. From what Lena said tonight, he has already gone ahead and requested that, but we would also like to make a formal request that he continue to make sure that happens. We also
just for the record,
yes,
point of order. Did I miss something? The next item on my agenda says Montera traffic intersection safety improvements.
You know what? I'm jumping the gun, and you're absolutely right. I just got off this airplane late last night, so I'm kind of barely here. Yes, let's move into that item. And I think I will just go ahead and turn it over to you, Greg, and you can go ahead and get started with that.
Well, Dave, could you want to put the letter up on the screen, or do you want me to put it up on the screen? This issue was raised by this letter was raised by Myra Glasscock and others at, I think, our last MCC meeting. And with the help and bludgeoning of Carlene and Myra, I put together a series of application forms. Actually, Myra filled them out first. I consulted with Amy McVicker, who's principal at Farallon View, and the supervisor and the head of the PTA joined in, and we got a bunch of other people to sign on. I think if we're going to state what the need is here, it would probably best come from Myra or Carlene, but there's severe safety issues because the streets in Montera at the locations we're asking for signs are unsigned. And I personally witnessed an accident at one of them 7 years ago, tried to get Jim Porter, Department of Public Works, to do something about it, and it just wasn't a priority. Now that it's a school-related issue, and of course, the kids walk up and down my street to go to school too. I think we have some momentum, and as you said, Don agreed in concept to entertain the idea if we would provide a letter of support. So I have produced a letter of support. I don't see it. I can share my screen. Let me try it. Can I? Maybe this is it.
There you go.
Did I share the right thing?
Yeah, that's our letter.
Okay, so it's a very simple letter. If we don't have a unanimous vote, I'll have to remove the word unanimously, assuming it's supported. And I also attached to the agenda the forms and a longer letter to Don pointing out that 2 of these intersections are already in Connect the Coast side. And not to surprise anybody, but if Myra or Carlene want to jump in and speak to the need, I'd welcome you to say why you think we need this right now.
Yes, this is Carlene. I'm the Safe Routes to School coordinator. I was also at the last meeting when Mira talked about the situation with her son being hit. He was on a bicycle. And so that's just, an unfortunate situation. And it's, one of many. And I think a lot of these never get reported. I went around and just counted how many unsigned intersections we have, and I easily came to 15, and I didn't even go south of 8th Street. But the ones we're most concerned about are the 5 here, and 2 of them really directly connect to Farallon View Elementary School. So I sent a letter to the council kind of explaining the past. First of all, we do parent surveys. I think I mentioned this at the last meeting. We do them every year, and every year, the number one concerns in Montera for Farallon View parents is, of course, these uncontrolled crossings, as well as, of course, the narrow streets. Really, there's very few sidewalks. So I kind of wanted to go back to the history to explain it all, because in 2014, we did a walk audit where, parents and teachers and the county and people from the school district come and talk about the concerns. And one big concern is there's really not a good, safe, continuous pathway from the front of Montera back to Farallon View Elementary School. So at that time, we talked a lot about 5th Street being a really good option for that. 3rd Street is very narrow and definitely not a good option. 4th Street is fast. There's no speed humps. And 5th Street actually has a few, sidewalks and speed humps, and it's wider, and that is a good option for a safer route as it is today, and it could be absolutely improved. So this is, we also had worked with Nicholas Calderon, who was a legislative aide for Supervisor Horsley at the time, and they were working with us and trying to get a grant to work on, which included that 5th Street, a trail back to the school. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. So it was just a natural thing when we met with Connect the Coast Side to talk again about 5th Street. So I was happy that it made it in to the plan, and that of course you can't do it without putting some type of signage at the 2 unsigned intersections, which are very close to the school. All 5 of these are less than half a mile from the school. So another thing that came up in the walk audit way back in 2014 was the pathway that many students use. It's, next to the alpaca farm, and it basically takes you from Tamron over to LeConte, which takes you to the school. And a lot of students access that on Franklin Street. Again, 2 intersections unsigned, which are just blocks from the school. So I happen to live on Franklin Street, and I myself learned very quickly that no stop sign means stop, especially because a lot of them, it's very hard to see at the intersection. There's, they're just visibility is not good. So unfortunately, a lot of these near misses never get counted. We also have a lot of visitors coming in to use the trails, especially near the school. There's trails right at the school. And we have people coming to visit the senior homes in the area, and they don't expect uncontrolled intersections. And I'm sure they would probably be really happy to have some stop signs so that we can all be safe. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. Mira, did you want to talk about it?
Yes, thank you. Mainly, I did prepare just a quick statement and thanks actually for the support. So I'll just quickly read this. In January, of course, I spoke about a near miss accident on LeConte and 5th involving a hit and run with my son. Since then, my son and I have experienced a great deal of sympathy and support, and not surprisingly, the issue of uncontrolled intersections in Montara affecting the population of Fairlawn View Elementary School has experienced a resurgence. I would like to thank the Vice Chair of MCC, Principal of Fairlawn View, Safe Routes to School Coordinator, CUSD Superintendent, the President and Vice President of the CUSD Board of Directors, and other community partners who have recently submitted the traffic sign request to San Mateo County for 5 uncontrolled intersections in Montara. Addressing the 5 intersections with traffic signage is a simple and inexpensive solution to provide more safety measures for the community, and most importantly, the children attending Fairlawn View. I'm asking the MCC to write a letter with urgency in support of the request to the San Mateo County Roads Division. This support letter will add credibility and can provide evidence such as the historical Safe Routes to School audit report, the Connect the Coast Side plan, any reported or non-reported traffic incidents, and the testimonies of the citizens that you hear during public comment. That's all I have prepared, and I just want to reiterate my thanks to everybody for your advocacy in regards to this matter, because the safety is, very important for our children.
Thank you so much, Greg, for all the effort and time you put into this. We really appreciate it.
Oh, I witnessed it firsthand, and in my case, a neighbor's had 2 kids in his front yard, and the cars collided and slid into the yard. There was a CHP officer on duty. The cars were damaged severely. No accident report was filed because the officer said nobody was injured. So I don't think we can go by the normal metrics, which begin with number of reported accidents. This isn't an issue of the amount of traffic. This is an issue about the severity of potential consequences And that's why I think it's urgent. But I wonder what the rest of the council has to say. Will they support such a letter?
Are there comments that council members want to make? I see that Dan has his hand up. Dan?
Yeah, sorry. My comment is that, of course, I would support stop signs at the appropriate locations that we're talking about. I just wanted to add, I think that we can do more. And I think that we could look at education on safe use of crossings by bicycles and skateboards, pedestrians. I'd like to bring up the problem with tinted windows on vehicles, passenger and driver's side windows that are tinted. I see it all the time. It's extremely important that we have unimpaired visual communication and eye contact with the operators of the vehicles, of all vehicles. Pedestrians, bicycles need to always practice clear visual communication at intersections. And with these tinted windows, I've seen sometimes where you can't even tell, you can't even see the passenger or the operator of the vehicle, let alone where their eyes are pointed. So it's it's another concern that I think dovetails into this discussion, and I think well, I'd like to see if there's other people on this in this meeting that share the same concern. I know that it might be a tricky thing. Is what can we do? But we can start, writing letters to the county and our assembly members and state senators to really put the pressure that the laws are enforced. It's my understanding that they're illegal, but they're just not enforced. I see it all the time. It started out being a cool thing to have, and it's evolved into commercial vehicles. It's just blatantly unenforced, not looked at. It's prevalent, it's growing, it's a problem. I am a person that used to ride my bicycle to school when I was younger. I still ride bicycles. Just to say that I've gotten this far in life, can say that maybe I've been doing some things right, and I get frustrated every time I see a vehicle that I can't visually communicate with, and I would expect that it's not just myself. Be a broad concern. So that's all I have to say right now.
Okay. Thank you, Dan. Michelle.
I would like a comment back from school.
No, I think we're going to go through the council and then we'll open it back up. Michelle?
Yeah, I just had a quick question and then I'll make my comments. But are these intersections on this list all of the unsigned intersections in Montara, or is this just a subset?
No, not at all. This is a focused subset, which we hope will get speedy approval. And I should just further comment. One of the reasons I'm doing this is I don't want to wait for Connect to Coastside. You saw how long that's taken to get going. This is within context, but I want it pushed out faster.
Yeah, agreed. Okay. Yeah, I mean, my comment is just that I moved to this area about 5 years ago and we have family in Montara, and I probably drove through those intersections several times before actually realizing that the other direction didn't have a stop sign, and in retrospect was like, oh, that was really dangerous. Like I've never experienced these uncontrolled intersections like this in any area that I've lived, including both suburban and rural areas. It's a really strange concept. And so while I know that the people who live in Montara know what to expect, as soon as any visitor comes there or someone who's new to the area, it's so dangerous to have uncontrolled intersections, especially so close to the school. So I'm very thankful that this issue has come up and that we're able to, at least make our voices heard, and hopefully the county will take swift action to address it.
Thank you. Lynn?
Two questions, I guess. First of all, maybe to Carlene. So you've talked about past efforts. Two questions about what you're requesting. On these 5 intersections, these are unsigned in both directions. Are you asking for 2-way or 4-way? Is it important to make that distinction?
It's a mixture.
Go ahead.
It's a mixture. If you read the underlying request, you'll see that there's 2-way stop signs at 3 of them and 4-way at 2 of them.
So shouldn't the letter indicate that?
Well, the detailed request does, and I didn't want to repeat the text. In fact, I didn't even want to include the list of the intersections because I didn't want to duplicate things. But I was advised that it would be better to be more specific about the intersections. But if you read the request, you'll see.
I feel the same way, that in the letter from the council, since there are many intersections there, it would be good to do it, even to say 2-way versus 4-way. I thought. From past efforts, do you know what the hindrance is? Are there certain guidances or regulations or point systems that come into play here that have blocked your efforts?
Yes, there's a list that we will probably not meet. I think I couldn't repeat it specifically, but I think one of them, you had to have 5 accidents within a year's time frame at that intersection. I don't know if either of you.
Well, my question.
Well, I could forward you what Paul sent me. I could forward it to you if you want.
And there's also a certain number of cars that need to go through the intersection, which we probably will not meet given our situation. And a recommendation was made to, ask the sheriff to, come back and monitor those areas, which we can do. And of course, that does help if they come every now and then. But the reality is the cost of stop signs, is not that great. And it could, deter people every day, not just the day that the sheriff comes back.
And I think maybe you're getting at your point that there is some federal guidelines, that there is a 5-point criteria that they will look at to make a determination on whether these intersections deem appropriate for signage. But I think what we're trying to do here is ask for a variance.
Yeah, I guess my thought is relative, to your process, even in the letter. There's one issue is accidents and accident rates, which especially in a community like Montara seems, even without Greg's story, seems to be somewhat superfluous. But understanding what the traffic volumes are, it seems to be useful information to be aware of. So I would recommend having that in your process so you can deal with it directly. And just sort of shortcut that. If you feel that you know what the counts are and they're below, at least you can speak to it.
Can I ask Greg and the two of you? I think what we're doing here is basically reinforcing the efforts that you're making, supporting your efforts. We're not trying to go back and rethink your process. You've already gone through all this in your own work, right? Yeah.
Yes.
So we're not second guessing you. We're just saying we approve of what you're doing. We support it 100%, and then please hurry up. Okay. I just want to clarify that.
That wasn't what I was trying to do.
To Len's point, it may be that they insist on doing a traffic study.
That's what basically, if you request that, they're going to come out and do a study is what they say. And I don't know that we're going to meet, the criteria. I can't say that for certain, but I'm just guessing we might not. But, it's an exceptional situation in that these intersections are so close to the school. And it just seems to make common sense to spend the money to do it.
They're unsigned, they're close to school, There's no sidewalks. The streets are already reasonably narrow. And there's a trailhead for GGNRA visitors right next to the school, right up the side street that goes by the school. It gets lots of traffic.
And there's no visibility at the intersection.
No visibility. Yeah.
Dave.
I was going to say that the criteria are not hard and fast. They are a should, not a must in most cases. And near school areas, school kids' safety is very often an overriding concern. So I wouldn't be too concerned that you don't meet strict criteria. And if necessary, I think, this has come up enough times that we can talk to the DPW folks in person. There may be particular problems with visibility. If the stop sign is not visible far enough back, then that can be a real issue. So they often have to trim bushes and sometimes even major tree limbs to make that work. And then it gets a lot harder. But they're pretty reasonable people.
The reason I was asking for it in the letter wasn't as a critique to your efforts. It just makes you more informed in the effort that you've studied the situation. If you recognize there's likely to be an issue like that, put it in up front, and you want to work with them to get around it. So that was the reason I'm suggesting it from that perspective.
Okay. Are you ready to look at approving your letter, Greg?
Well, I need a motion, so I guess I would make a motion to discuss and potentially approve this letter, and I'll need a second.
It's best if the person who owns the agenda item doesn't make the motion.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the letter.
I second.
Oh, I'm sorry, Jill. I didn't ask if you had comments.
I don't have any comments. I second Michelle's motion.
Okay. Is there any discussion of approving the letter? Len, are you offering an amendment to it or?
No, I've made a suggestion. It would be up to them if they think that would be useful to consider amending it. I just wanted to make sure it was understood, not to say it's a barrier and you shouldn't do it, but just to make you look more informed. And if this dialogue seems to go back several years, then I would think we'd be in a good position to say that. But no, it's really up to the authors of the letter.
Okay.
Dan has a comment.
Dan?
Yes. So again, not to necessarily go into any amendments to the letter, but I am interested to hear from Mira and Carlene if if they've had any experience or concerns with the the tinted windows, being able to communicate to the drivers of vehicles, and also if there's ever been any discussion about education to the kids on best practices of using bicycles and intersections and crossing and all that. Because so do you have any comments?
Yes, of course, as our Safe Routes to School grant is pretty much a non-infrastructure grant, so much of that is education. So we do provide education to students around pedestrian and bicyclist safety. We may not do it every year at every school because our budget is not that big, and the principals do kind of choose from a menu of vendors and different things that they can do. But definitely making eye contact with drivers is a recommendation and something that's talked about with students, of course. I've not personally had that problem, nor have I ever received a parent comment with the problem about tinted windows. I'm not saying it's not a problem, but it has not come up from our parents that I'm aware of.
Okay. Any other discussion on the letter? If we're ready to vote, Len, could you call the roll?
Excuse me, one more question to Carlene. Do you acknowledge that it is important to be able to see the driver from a school, from a student's perspective on a bicycle or crossing a street? Do you acknowledge that it is very important to be able to visually make eye contact with the operator of a vehicle?
Yes, we do recommend that. And if you are not able to make the eye contact, then we suggest they don't make the move. So yes, it's important.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So this was Michelle made the motion. Who made the second?
Joe, I think.
Thank you. Okay, are you ready, Claire?
Yes.
Dan. Dan.
Yes.
Jill.
Yes.
Michelle.
Yes.
Dave.
Yes.
Greg.
Yes.
Myself, yes. Claire.
Yes.
Passes 7-0.
And I want to thank the community members who brought this to us and let us know what else we can do to help as it goes along.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you all.
Okay. Now we'll move into the next item.
Just make a comment relative to what we did then. In your letter, do mention that it was passed unanimously.
And
that's what the text says. The text says that already.
It does. You're already there. Good point.
And thank you, Mara and Carlene.
Now we'll move into the item regarding our formal request to Don Horsley to initiate a county study of issues about lead fuel at the airport. We're using an approach to this tonight where Michelle will present the issues and the process to us, and a quote draft letter, which is not really a draft letter, but it's a list of things that would be included in a letter that she will be writing if we approve her to do that. And this is a variation of one of the approaches we discussed at the retreat to simplify our letter writing process. So I'll turn it over to Michelle.
Thank you, Claire. Yeah, we're trying this new process. I hope that the process question doesn't detract from the discussion about this issue, which I think is a really important issue. So to give a little bit of background, everyone has probably heard that in Santa Clara County, there's an airport called Reed Hillview that in the last couple of years, the Santa Clara County Board of Supervisors asked for a lead study, and they studied the blood levels of children in the area and determined that there was a significant increase in the lead in the blood levels of lead levels in the blood of children who live closer to the airport, especially those who live downwind of the airport and the planes that are taking off. And so it's been brought up here in a couple meetings, and I really just wanted to bring this issue to the council and get a formal request for the Board of Supervisors to look into this issue and to take some immediate steps to try to reduce the lead pollution in our area. I'm going to share my screen, and I know there's a lot. I spend an inordinate amount of time doing the research for this, but I think it's really important, and I found a lot of interesting things, and I really want to share some of my findings with everyone, and I'll go through it really quickly so that we're not spending a lot of time, because I really want to get to the second half of this, which is the body of the letter. So really what this document is kind of all the research, and it's a great resource. Everything has links, so you can find it on our website. But I'm just going to quickly go through the bullets. So lead is a cumulative toxicant that affects multiple body systems, and it's particularly harmful to young children because young kids are putting stuff in their mouth all the time. A lot of the lead pollution that comes from, lead in the air or that ends up on the ground gets into the bodies and the blood of young children. There's no safe level lead in blood, even very low levels have been shown to have detrimental impacts, including reducing a child's learning capacity, their ability to pay attention, and their academic achievement. So many years ago, there used to be lead in all the cars, the fuel for all the cars, and that was outlawed. It finally completely phased out in the mid-90s, but nothing's been done about the lead in airplanes. And the single highest source of lead pollution in the United States now is that from single engine or small piston engine airplanes. And that percentage of lead that comes from the aviation, pollution from aviation, has been increasing as the other sources of lead in the United States have been phased out. So in 2008, it was accounted for 57% of the lead and put into the air. In 2014, 63%. I don't have later data, but I think we can assume that it's actually increasing in terms of the percentage because nothing's been done. So there is just still a ton, literally tons of pollution a year of lead that are just making its way into our air because of these airplanes. Interestingly, commercial jets don't pollute. The type of fuel that they use does not contain lead. And so they use kerosene-based jet fuel, and that does not pollute lead. But it's all these small airplanes, about 170,000 of them in the United States that are operating out of airports similar to Half Moon Bay. So the estimated number of operations as takeoffs and landings primarily at our airport is 50,000. That's just relative to these other airports. They're about 114,000. Actually, there's an exact number at San Carlos Airport because they have a tower and they actually count everything. But since we don't have a communications tower, we don't have an exact count of Half Moon Bay. And then at Reed Hillview, it was 163,000. So they definitely have more traffic than us. But not to say that there's not a significant amount. I mean, 50,000 is still a lot of operations that occur each year at our airport. And it can be, as you know, from living here, the weather is, sunny some days. And on the days when it's sunny, you have airplanes taking off and landing almost constantly throughout the day. And so actually that has an impact on the lead levels in people around here, because on those days when there are a lot of planes taking off and landing, it causes a spike in the lead levels. We actually have some data. So as of 2008, the Half Moon Bay Airport emitted 151 kilograms a year of lead, so 333 pounds a year. And then I just put a number compared to SFO. It's 151 versus 183 kilograms at SFO. That's because SFO doesn't have a lot of these small planes, so that it's just slightly higher than what we are. I believe Reed Hillview, I don't remember the exact numbers, but it was like in the high hundreds, like 600 or 700. So that's just kind of a comparison. So as I mentioned, in the Santa Clara County Board of Supervisors commissioned a study of lead levels in children. And what they found, they analyzed 17,000 blood samples that had been collected in the past of children living within 1.5 miles of the airport, and found that the children who lived within a half a mile of the airport had significantly higher levels of lead in their blood than those that lived further away. So this was a peer-reviewed study. It concluded that there is a definite impact from the operations of the airport. And this is why I brought up the point about, the sunny days and the increased operations, because during times of maximum aircraft traffic, children within half a mile of the airport had an increased blood level of 0.83 micrograms per deciliter. That's how it's measured, which is nearly twice that observed at the height of the Flint water crisis. So, I mean, we know what a big deal that was. And this is happening every day around the country in places that have aircraft operations close by. I just put the number of people in our area. So, 13,000 people and almost 3,000 children live in the areas of Montero, Moss Beach, and El Granada, all which are within 2 miles. I drew a map and mapped it out. They're all within, all areas of those 3 communities are within 2 miles of the airport. Sorry to bore you, Lynn. The EPA responded to a petition. So as a result of this study, the Santa Clara Board of Supervisors voted to ban leaded fuel at Reed Hillview and San Martin airports, the 2 airports in the county, based on the results of that study. And they made that decision in August, and the ban went into effect January 1st. So now you can't buy leaded fuel at those locations. The EPA also responded to a petition that the County of Santa Clara filed. And so there are bigger changes being made, but it's going to be slow going at the federal level. But the EPA does plan to issue an endangerment finding this year. And then they have to go through the whole process of public notice and a comment period. But they plan to have a final endangerment finding in 2023, which basically lays the groundwork for a full ban on leaded fuel. So I think we're finally getting some traction, but it's going to take a number of years before this happens. Also of note that after they did the study of the blood levels in children, the Santa Clara County Board of Supervisors is now conducting further lead testing at the airport to determine how contaminated the soil is, because this lead does settle on the ground. And so there's, if we have the same issue in our area, which we of course do because there is leaded fuel and planes are taking off with that, it is settling on the soil. And so we really do need to understand how much lead is getting into the soil, especially because the soil is being used to grow vegetables. And we know that there are many food producing farms located within a half a mile of the airport. Just a point that we talked about recently was that the Dream Machines show was canceled this year because the airport is being used to grow food. And so, it's highly likely that food is being grown in soil contaminated by lead, and people are eating it. So I did find this in my research that back in 2014, the San Mateo County Board of Supervisors actually required fuel providers at the San Carlos Airport to stock and sell an unleaded fuel option. However, leaded fuel remains the only option sold at Half Moon Bay Airport. I don't know why that is. I don't know why it was, only changed in San Carlos, but we need to change that here as well. At least immediately, I think we need to offer an unleaded fuel option. And eventually ban leaded fuel at our airport. But San Mateo County actually owns the airport and is according to some websites I found, talking about the fuel that is sold at the airport, it is this 100 LL leaded fuel, and it's sold by the county. And so the county should be able to make the switch, or at least offer an additional option here at our airport as well. And then according to the San Carlos Airport Association, the unleaded fuel option, which is called UL94, that's sold at San Carlos Airport can be used by 65% of small planes. It's also cheaper to buy, causes less wear and tear on the engines, and is, quote, unquestionably better for the environment. In order for airplanes to switch, they have to file for a one-time supplemental type certificate, which costs the planes around $100. I think it's a small price to pay for the health of our children. So all of that is the background information. The request here, which is what I really want to put in the letter and maybe, would pull in some background information just for context. But here's what we're really asking for. I want the San Mateo County Board of Supervisors to commission a study of lead exposure and contamination surrounding the Half Moon Bay Airport to investigate whether there's a link between the lead-based gas emissions and the blood levels of children living near the airport. So it should include testing of children within the areas that I mentioned that fall within 2 miles of the airport. I'd also like to just move ahead on the soil testing now. We know that Santa Clara County did this in 2 phases, but I would like to get the soils tested right away because we know if there's lead in the air, it's going to be settling on the soil. And then Greg brought up a great point that Montero Water and Sanitary District actually has 3 wells located at the Half Moon Bay Airport, 2 of which I think are still used. One, it seems like, is no longer in use, but one or 2 which definitely supply some of the water at times. And I believe they have done some testing, but we'd like the county to do some follow-up testing of the water that comes out of those wells, just to observe whether there is any lead in that water. And then I would like to also include in this request that San Mateo County take immediate steps to sell unleaded fuel as an option at the Half Moon Bay Airport, just like they do at the San Carlos Airport, and that the county move entirely to unleaded fuel in the near future. Okay, so that's it. You want to go to questions or comments, Claire? You're on mute, I think.
Yes, we will go to questions and comments. Several people have their hands up. We'll just go around to the whole council and let everyone ask or say what they want to say. And we'll start with Len. You're on mute, Len.
Was are all engines capable of converting to lead without any mechanical adjustments?
No, they're not. That's, that is one of the complaints that pilots brought up when Santa Clara County outright banned leaded fuel, is that now they can't fly. Some planes can't fly there. Like I said, 65% of planes should be able to immediately switch just after they get that certificate. The other 35% would have to do more work to be able to accept unleaded fuel.
Okay, thank you.
Jill?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Sorry, I'm having technical difficulties tonight. I have a few questions. So I know that lead fuel is needed for World War II planes like the P-51 and the Russian Yak-9 fighter. And Eddie Andrini Jr. has both of those. He has a couple more too. And if we don't sell leaded fuel at the Half Moon Bay Airport, it means that these old planes can't fly. And Dream Machines has a lot of these old planes that fly. So I'm not saying that we shouldn't get rid of it. I'm just commenting that people that have these old planes, I'm not sure where they would, I'm not sure how hard it is to convert them or if they can be converted. So I would hate to see that part of our history gone, because it is very exciting when Eddie flies those planes. I know people are, really excited about it. It's like stepping into the past. I'm not sure why they don't use kerosene like they use in commercial planes and these World War II planes. It could be because it's explosive. I'm not sure. My second comment is soil testing. So I don't have a beef with soil testing of the fields, but plants don't absorb lead. So Brussels sprouts don't absorb lead into their tissues. It's too heavy. It's a heavy metal. The only way the Brussels sprouts would get lead is from particles in the air that land on the plants, and which is why you should wash your vegetables before you eat them. So I don't know if I'm happy with that part of the letter. And then the third comment is the study should include testing of children, and that all sounds great to test the children, but I've tested my daughter when she was 2, I tested her for lead. It was required because we lived in an old house. And, my doctor recommended it and I did it. But it was super traumatic. It's like huge needles, multiple vials. She was 2. It was really traumatic. So I'm not sure I'm comfortable with that. I mean, I guess if people, they're not required, they just volunteer their kids, but still it's quite an ordeal. And I support the letter. I think it's great to look into lead at the airport, but I do have some concerns. Thank you.
Do you want?
Yeah, I can comment on some of those things. So first, I'll go in reverse order. So with the blood testing of children, we would not be required to take new blood, to actually get new children to give blood to do the study. What it would do would actually be a study of the reports of people like you who already had their blood tested. From what I understand, when Santa Clara did this, they looked back at blood drawn from 2011 into 2020, and so they were looking back at the data of children who've already had their blood taken for other reasons. So there would not be any requirement for anyone to get tested going forward. So anyone who lives in a house that was built before 1978, or as I understand, anyone who's on Medicare gets this testing routinely right around age 2. And like for me with my children, because our house was built slightly newer than that, we didn't get the blood testing. I'm I guess happy to be warned by you that it is traumatic, because I just put in a request with our doctor to get my kids tested. So that's something we'll definitely think about. But there will not be anyone going around with needles trying to take kids' blood as a result of this request. And then on the comment on the older planes, you're right. There are older planes that are going to be unable to operate on unleaded fuel. This letter is not asking right now to stop selling leaded fuel. It's asking to sell unleaded fuel in addition to leaded fuel, and to look at a potential of moving this way in the future. It also doesn't mean that those planes can't fly here. It would just mean if we do ever move to a point where unleaded fuel is the only option available, they could fill up somewhere else and still fly here. So I think it's a small price to pay for the health and safety of our children.
Okay, I'm going to jump in here with a little bit of medical data. I'm just looking up what's entailed with lead testing, and apparently it can be done. I'm sorry for Jill's children, but it can be done with a simple capillary tube with a drop of blood from a fingertip. It doesn't have to be a big production. It also can be done with a urinalysis, but it's a fairly extensive one. So there are less invasive ways of doing it. And you might want to think about testing adults as well, because we're all getting it, and we maybe spare some of the children. So moving on, though, move to Dan. Did you have some comments, Dan? You're on mute.
You're on mute.
Sorry about that. Yes, thank you, Michelle, for taking this. Taking the time to put this letter together. Nowhere in the letter, or I haven't heard any concern with helicopters. I'm assuming that helicopters take the same fuel, and I know it's much more rare that low-flying helicopters in our area. Versus the big problem is, I guess, the stop and go stuff. But when helicopters are flying so low, which I've experienced, witnessed several times. Granted, it is infrequent, but it does happen. You know, these helicopters, because they're so low, they're actually, you know, the airstream's not taking away some of the, you know, the exhaust and all. You know, these helicopters are dispersing more of the exhaust, and it's getting more direct. So I didn't hear anything about, you know, the helicopter concern that I have, in addition to everything else that you've said. But yeah, and to address Jill's concern about, you know, some of the older planes, yes, you know, the father, you know, was Eddie Andrini. You know, I've been here 35 years almost. And I was kind of a regular you know, I could hearing his training in the area. I do have some passion towards the older planes, and I guess I would agree to some level that that there's some, and it does say in your letter here, the last paragraph, to move entirely to unleaded. So I guess I'm not clear on I guess I'm not in full agreement to having it. You know, I think there should be some variances, but overall, I agree with the letter, and I'd like to have some of the low-flying helicopters addressed in this letter as well.
Okay. Thanks, Dan. I want to jump in again, because this is supposed to be a 15-minute item, because we're not supposed to be getting into the nitty-gritty of related issues. This is simply a request to the county to study the issue of lead fuel at the airport. So anything else that's not included in that is not what we're discussing. So we just want to know.
It's all related, Claire. It's all related.
But it's not what we're voting on.
But it's related.
Dan, I'm not necessarily addressing this to you. I'm just trying to speed things up a little bit.
I understand that.
Okay. Go on to Dave then.
I would drop the MWSD request. They do a detailed test, including lead, every year at every well and other water source. It's actually sent out to customers every year. Most people never look at it. I read it every year for the CCWD, but I did when I was in MWSD as well. So there's no need to do that. The airport wells already have I forget which ones, and so they have to dilute that water to meet standards, but it is actually measured routinely, so I would strongly suggest dropping that. Other than that, I would say keep this as brief as possible, the background to the minimum, put the request up front. Since this is a new process, try and keep it as short and factual as possible. The idea being this is quote unquote a simple letter, and that's why we're using this process. If it turns out when you write it that's not the case, then we should bring it back to the council again. So we leave that up to you, assuming we vote for this. Thanks.
Greg?
At the risk of disagreeing with Dave Olson, I'm going to contradict some of what he just said. I traded multiple emails with the general manager of MWSD and the chairman of the board. They do a TAP test on homes for lead. The last study they showed me was 2017. They looked at 20 homes. The problem with that is they mostly use water from the aquifer on the mountain, not the airport wells. The airport wells are only used occasionally, and I'll skip the details as to why. Separately, they did just today send me an excerpt of a spreadsheet showing the dates of tests on the airport wells, and they're all years old. So if they're doing tests, for some reason, Clemens didn't want to share them with me today, and I don't think they are. I do think they do tap tests frequently, but that's also an issue of the plumbing in your house accumulating lead. So I don't think it's a problem to ask for this. If it turns out there's no need and there's evidence that's recent, I'm sure that will be brought up. So I think it's okay to go ahead with this letter as written or as proposed, and ask for what study we can get. I mean, Michelle, let's not skip over the key point here. Michelle pointed out what they found at Reed Hillview, and the fact that we have what 85% of the lead discharge in our little airport that they do of all of SFO. That's pretty scary.
Okay, it's what I'm hearing as people discuss this is one point of possible disagreement, and that is whether we should ask to move eventually to all lead-free fuel. Should we get a set? Let's get a sense of the council as to whether we want to leave that particular clause in the letter.
Or could I suggest that we say we lighten it and say investigate a move to rather than say and that the county move entirely to unleaded fuel, but investigate a move or look into the steps needed to move to it. Maybe make it softer.
I like that.
Okay. Is there anything else that we feel like we need to give Michelle direction on in that last section of the letter? Or are we okay with the way it stands with the modification that she just mentioned?
I'm fine. So I'll move that we authorize Michelle to write the letter.
I'm okay with it.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the letter as she's described it. And we have a second. Jill, I think you seconded that. Is that correct?
Excuse me, Claire, I could not hear. I was not able to hear Dave's comment for some reason.
He moved that we approve the letter concept. And I think Jill seconded it.
Wait a minute.
I second.
Yeah.
So, Claire?
Yes?
So, clarification. So, under this process, this is really a motion to go ahead and approve a letter to go forward. It's only the production that changes?
It's a letter, it's a vote to authorize Michelle to write this letter, finalize it, and send it.
But what we're trying to state,
the wording that I did.
We're stating, yeah, the wording has to be that we approve the letter that's sent.
No, I made the motion that did not say that, and it was a very explicit one.
That's why we're trying to get the wording clear, Dave. Go ahead.
So that's why I will repeat the wording.
It was a little unclear, your connection.
Okay, yeah, for some reason, my connection has been pretty bad lately. I move that we authorize Michelle to write and send a letter based on the discussion without further council approval.
You dropped off in the middle.
You dropped off again. Try it again, please, Dave.
The motion is Michelle is authorized to write a letter based on this agenda item discussion and send it without further council approval.
I have a problem with that. It's not, well, I guess the question is.
So you can have a problem with that, but we have a motion and a second. You would have to amend the motion.
No, basically it's just to clarify the motion. So I guess in the simplest sense, do you consider this to be a weaker approach in terms of the letter that goes out than the way we currently do it?
It's not weaker or stronger, it's just faster. This is a non-controversial letter.
And this is an approach suggested by Tim Fox as a way to get some of the collaboration and other issues out of the way.
So Dave's motion is on the table.
Second.
We have a second. So we're voting on whether to go through exactly what Dave just said and authorize Michelle to send and write this letter in reverse order. Is there any discussion about that particular motion?
Yes, I have a comment. And so I'm concerned that this is starting a precedent of something that really ultimately could result in a letter sent that the council does not approve.
Well, we discussed that with Tim Fox, and what he said is if that happens, then we will deal with it, and we will deal with the person that did it, and we will learn from it. I think this is a good one to start with because it is non-controversial.
I think it's a dangerous direction to move towards.
You could vote against it.
So I will.
Okay.
Well, I really want to discourage people from voting against this letter because they disagree with the process. I mean, this is such an important topic, and I think we have to express our full support of this. And if we have a letter that doesn't have a unanimous consent, then I'm worried that that's going to send the wrong signal to the Board of Supervisors.
So
this is a good reason why we should not report whether things are unanimous or not. Because once it's passed the council, it is our position, and nobody needs to know whether it was unanimous or not. Because there's a lot of reasons.
I disagree with that totally.
I know you do.
Well, I mean, Tim Fox, in talking about this, explicitly said, when you have a motion, you record and report the actual result.
Yes, but not in the body of the letter.
No, you don't need to put it in the body of the letter, but it's still communicated to the public along with the letter. And in this case, all we're going to authorize is that Michelle was authorized to write a letter based on our understanding from the conversation.
Yeah, I agree with Glenn. You know, the community is part of this as well. So you're kind of short circuiting the community out of the picture.
I don't think so, but
what I was saying, when you send a letter, I mean, you can state what the vote was, and I think that's an important thing to do. That's where I think we disagree.
Yeah. Okay, so we have a motion on the floor to follow.
The other option would be just kind of work through it, take a little bit of time, and just get it right and approve it.
No, I think we have the motion and the affirm. So let's have to write it up. Is to authorize Michelle to write a letter on this topic based on the discussion and to send it.
Yeah. And that's why I wanted to, I expressed reluctance to use this process for this letter because I really didn't want it to come down to this being a discussion about the process. And that's why I really tried to clearly bullet out what I would say in the letter. And, the area, the background information, I don't think anyone disagrees with. It's all sourced and factual, but the request is here. And I've heard a couple things tonight that I would change. As we talked about, soften this language, requesting that the county investigate a move to unleaded fuel. And then Jill brought up the point where Brussels sprouts, which I didn't know, thank you, Jill, apparently don't take up the lead from the soil. And so that would be coming from the air. I still think that soil testing is important and we all seem to agree with that. So I would just remove the reference to that specific type of food.
Okay, we can decide not to deal with this at all and just bring it back to a subsequent meeting. But I thought we wanted to get this off. So I would ask Glenn if you could call the roll on the motions on the table.
Okay, move's been moved and seconded. Going to take the vote. Dan?
No.
Jill?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
Dave? Dave?
Yes.
Greg?
Yes.
I'm yes. Claire?
Yes.
The motion passes 6-1.
Thank you. Last item on the regular agenda is I'm bringing up my agenda and I don't have it. It just disappeared, but it is regarding expenditures for storage. And I'll turn that over to Dave and Greg.
Yeah, so we've discussed this a little bit multiple times when we've been talking about the website. Because Squarespace doesn't give you a way to back up documents, it only gives you a way to back up blog postings and a limited subset of those. Store those documents somewhere so that if the website ever goes away for some reason, or we want to do something else with the documents, we still have them. So I am proposing that we use Google Drive for that. We already have a Midcoast Community Council account. We would make that storage publicly available for reading, not for writing, obviously. And with Lisa's help and my fifth attempt at actually doing a backup of a Squarespace 5 website, I now believe I have all of the files and images on the old MCC website, and they match pretty much what Lisa had. Lisa has what looks like earlier versions of some of the documents, and documents were renamed at some point, so I'm still... It's 3 to 4 gigabytes of data. And that would fit within the normal free 15 gigabytes. But we have had to turn down multiple documents because they wouldn't fit on the MCC website. And in some cases, I've made heroic efforts to shrink documents. In other cases, we've split them up. So we could just put those on the drive directly and link to them. And documents are getting bigger, images are getting bigger. So I would like the council to authorize up to $200 for 5 years of Google Drive storage. Right now, that's $20 a year. If somebody asks, Google has reduced rate and feature Google Suite stuff for nonprofits, but explicitly not for government agencies. The other part was a former council member, Leonard Warren, has a large number of DVDs from early MCC meetings that were never put on the web. Some of them were linked directly to his server way back, and he is in the process of digitizing those. We would like to get those and put them on a flash drive and then eventually create a YouTube channel and upload them to the YouTube channel. So I'm asking for another $175 to be authorized for that flash drive and for authorization to create the YouTube channel. So that's briefly what it is. I'll turn it over to Greg to cover anything I missed or got wrong.
I move that we authorize the expenditures outlined by Dave and published in the agenda for the meeting.
Second. Will that be adequate?
Yes, that's a reasonably high quality flash drive, and it would hold far more DVDs than Leonard is digitizing. And we won't need for other storage as well and passing files back and forth if we want to later on.
And you don't think you'll need more money than what we're currently authorizing?
No, $150 gives you a really high quality one. So I'm giving a little bit extra for taxes and shipping and things like that.
Is there any other discussion of this, or can we move to a vote?
Yeah, discussion. So Dave, can you say once again about the ramifications of putting Leonard Warren's DVDs on? So it's going to be off the website, but on a separate drive? I guess I don't fully understand how this is going to work.
So Leonard is digitizing them, putting them on his own personal storage, and has offered to ship us the DVDs, but then we'd have to digitize them all over again. So I was an indirect party to the conversation between Greg and Leonard, but the solution we reached, which would be much simpler for us, is for us to send Leonard the flash drive, and after he's digitized it, he'll put everything on the flash drive and ship it back to us or hand it to us, depending.
And then what will be done with the flash drive?
We would, so similar to the way PCTV has a YouTube channel with playlists for all the organizations it records, we would create a Midcoast Community Council YouTube channel, and we would put all of those videos on that, obviously reviewing them just to make sure there's not anything bad on them. But
and do we know that this is acceptable to Leonard Warren as far as the method? I cannot imagine. He wants them for us to have them because we don't have the meeting videos. So yes, I'm sure. But Greg, did you have that?
He's agreed. He's agreed to this. That's why he's doing the work.
Very good. Thank you.
Hey, Len, could you call the roll?
So to be clear,
I have a comment also.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. If we're going to create a Midcoast Community Council YouTube, why don't we just have him upload them to the YouTube channel instead of having a intermediate flash drive?
It's a very tedious process. I do that for the History Association. I doubt Leonard would want to do that.
Oh, I thought you just uploaded and walked away and then it, did its business and you came back.
Not when you're talking
He's already
about,
pointed this out.
Yeah, 2-3 hour videos. It's often multiple tries. There's other issues that you need to deal with, permissions, a whole slew of stuff.
Okay, is there any other discussion? Can we?
so it ultimately, when you say YouTube, it ultimately becomes a YouTube accessible file?
Yes.
Okay, it's just the tools to get it there. Okay, and the total capped expenditure is $200.
Plus the 175.
And the $200 is for 5 years of Google Drive. 5 years from now, somebody's going to have to reauthorize that. Okay. So that should go somewhere in our tickler file that we don't have, but that'll be under the processes and policies discussion.
So in a bundle, the total expenditure authorized is $375 with those qualifying statements, right? Okay, thank you. So taking the vote, Jill?
I'm thinking about it. Come back to me.
Okay, Michelle?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Dave?
Yeah.
Greg?
Yes.
Lynn? Yes. Claire?
Yes.
Back to you, Jill.
Can I abstain?
Yes, you can.
Thank you.
The motion passes 6-0, 1 abstention.
Okay, thank you. Last item is the minutes, which Len pulled from consent.
Yeah, given where the meetings is gone and there's only one particular item I want to bring up, and I can cover that under item 5, that we'll pass on that and just bring those forward at the next meeting.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, so I had my agenda here a second ago and now I've lost it again.
Wait. I've got other issues. Len may be done, but I'm not.
But wait a minute. Okay.
Well, they got pulled for discussion. So.
All right. So yes. Okay. They did. So go ahead.
They're getting, there's still a number of issues with the minutes as they exist. And comments I said the first time that were sort of acknowledged. were not addressed. Some of them have been addressed now in the very latest version, which came out at 6:15 tonight, I think, at least on my quick skim. But I'm concerned that we're falling further and further and further behind in the minutes, which is what happened last year. We're now, after this meeting, will be five meetings with no minutes. So two are done. I understand losing minutes. It happened to me several times too. It's a royal pain to go back and do them again. But I just want to be sure that you're confident you're going to be able to keep up with this, that you're going to catch up and then keep up.
Well, I outlined the process, and part of it involves feedback from people like you. And I guess the only question I have on the 26th Amendment, if you have concerns you want to bring up now, you're welcome to do it.
My main one is that it still has none of the public comments in it. You've added their names and
that's correct.
But, which is good. But
I added their names, and I gave a rough total of how they stood on the issues.
Yeah,
so Dave, if you want more from that, you can ask for it. I won't be giving it to you. You'll be finding a new secretary. So okay, we can talk it offline further if you want.
Well, I think this is a very appropriate time to talk about it, because last year when this came up, the consensus of the council, which is, as far as I know, all the same people, was we wanted this, obviously not literally, and maybe I went too long, but so if you do not want to do that, then I think we do need to find another secretary.
Okay, I consider that. Okay, you're welcome.
I'm not asking for your resignation.
No, yes, you are.
No. I'm saying this sounds like it needs more discussion than we can have under this.
That's what I said. So I left it as more discussion. You said you want a discussion now.
But I wanted to bring up the issue. So it sounds like we need an agenda item.
Well, we should talk offline, and then if you need to bring it up, we can do that at the next meeting. I don't know. We need to talk more about it.
Think I've got anything more to say than what I've just said. So okay. I will leave it up to Claire whether she thinks, and other people whether.
Well, basically, I had reached out to you, Claire and Greg, and you can, carry the conversation.
Excuse me, I'm not sure I followed that.
I gave my plan for recovery, but it involved you, Greg and Dave, sort of being a review group.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I heard what I got from that was that you were working on this and that you would have a plan for doing it differently, but I didn't know what that was. Were you wanting feedback from us about what that is?
No, the issue is particularly the minutes for the 26th, so you can use that as a reference point.
Yeah, I gave you some feedback on that too, I think.
Well, more came out since you arrived, so anyway, you should. But as Dave said, I just gave it to him at 6:15, so.
Oh, okay. So I didn't see the latest one. Okay.
Correct.
Well, unless you're resigning right now, Len, which I don't think you.
No, I'm not. Dave is
then I don't think we're going to resolve this.
Right, and that's why I'm saying I think we need an agenda item soon.
Well, and I suggested there's a committee to carry it forward, but
I'm not sure what you mean by carry it forward. You mean talking about
a future agenda item that's carrying it forward.
Oh, okay. Okay, well, so let's meet about this. The appropriate people will meet about this between this meeting and next and decide whether to put it on the agenda as something to review at that time.
Sounds good.
Okay. Okay, so any council activity that we want to bring up?
Yes. So in working on the minutes for the retreat and consulting with Greg on the tables he's working on, I think he and I reached a common understanding that really the retreat was not a process that was complete. And one question is, so do you have another meeting, or do you bring it to agenda items as a discussion offline? And the thought is you could not close the minutes on the retreat until you finished a certain process of completion. I didn't know where you were, Claire, in terms of where we got to in our retreats and where you wanted to go to finish the process, but it didn't seem that it was complete.
I'm not sure what you're referring to.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I'll leave it over to Greg.
Well, so what I was going to bring up was that we had two documents that I produced. One was the assignments and task list. I believe that's substantially complete. If anybody has any problem with it, I'd like to hear about it. I haven't heard yet. The other was the work plans and priorities. And I thought I had an open action item that I was going to mention. Was I going to split that into two documents? Because right now, the one document we had bundled in last year's developments and accomplishments along with this year's priorities. Was I supposed to split that into two and post a 2021 version with what we did last year and then 2022 version that only has this year's, or is it just going to be accepted as is with the blue text mixed with the black text? That's what I'm unclear.
I think you could refine the blue and black part, but there's some value in my mind to keeping some review of last year with alongside the plans for the future year.
Okay, so you don't see a reason to produce a separate 2021 document with past year accomplishments or activities?
I do have some concerns about this because remember the task list is a working document that people refer to see who's doing what and whether there's an issue covered or not.
So task list or work plan and priorities? The work plan and priorities is what I was talking about.
Okay, I thought you were talking about the task list.
Task list is the assignments like, you know, who does the mail.
Sorry, got the name wrong. Yes, we're talking about the same document. So the document you have is great. It captures the history. It captures the discussion. It's wonderful. That's perfect. But I think we need a living document work plan, which is what we're doing in 2022, which is not the same as what we've got. And because what we have is the history plus the future. So I could take a swat at what I'm thinking of and send it to you. Maybe that's the best. I don't know what the rest of the council thinks on this issue.
So Len has also done this. Len has taken a attempt to reorganize it using the taxonomy that Michelle had used in 2021. And I didn't know that whether that was worth doing or not.
Well, Michelle, I may have an opinion on that. To me, we just need to finish it. I think that whatever is clearest as a working document, we should do. And I don't think it matters a whole lot which language we use, as long as we can use a document to add on what we're doing to. But I'll let Michelle speak to that. But you're on.
And I actually had my hand raised for another topic, so I'm okay with whatever the group decides on.
What Michelle had in her items for 21 used a grouping that had been used for several years for the priorities and tasks to go forward, and those were about 5 or 6 major categories. That helps you keep track of sort of at a year-to-year basis where you're doing work and how it relates to previous work. So that was what I was trying to show Greg in an item we discussed the other day. The question
is that continuity important?
The question I'm raising is, do you want to just view it as whether it's in any given year we had 10 priorities or 15 or whatever, and track those, and then the next year you develop a new list, or you relate to how are we doing in the area of infrastructure or parks or planning or transportation, and look at them in groups like that. And that's the sort of the framework that Michelle had been created and was used for the several prior years.
Unfortunately, we didn't use it at the retreat. Maybe we should have, but we didn't. And if we want to reflect what we did at the retreat, we probably would group them the way we did at the retreat.
That's what I said, Greg.
Yeah.
So the question is whether to sort of extend the process to do that or stop in place. I think that's the guidance we're looking for.
I'm happy
to do it either way. I just only want to do it once.
Yeah, I would go with what you've got, Greg, but that's just my opinion. I don't know if there's a consensus on that or not.
Well, it's sort of hard to do it in this framework without things in front of us, but
I don't see a need for Greg to redo what he's been doing. Is that what's holding up the minutes from the retreat?
No, there was just there's still some editing work to do in closure, I think, but that's, just that's sort of hard to say. Okay. Can we move on from this, or? Well, I guess I'd ask Dave. He's the longest continuous history here. I mean, do you have a concern or view one way or the other, Dave?
No, I'll withdraw my request. The format of it doesn't matter to me. What matters is that it's in usable form that people can, both on the council and the community, can look at and use the following year to.
I mean, I think the overall structure is important to tie somewhat to the departments in the county, but that's a discussion we can't do here. So if people want to just have an individual list, then that's sort of your call, Claire, as a chair. You put it together. So yeah, I'm happy not going back to that. I see the value to it, but I don't think we need to do it. I think we just need to get it finished in a usable form. And if you could finish that up, Greg, that would be great. Michelle, you wanted to report something.
Yes, I just wanted to say, for those who don't know, the lock on the MCC office at the airport was not working. And so we put in a maintenance request to get that fixed, and it ended up at the airport manager's office. And I haven't been by, but apparently just today, I think they replaced the lock. So there's a new code on the lock. And for those who knew the previous code, it's the same code without the last digit. And if anyone needs that, they can reach out to me or Dave. But we should be able to get back into our office now.
And for future reference, it should be routed to the airport manager's office if something like that happens, facilities-wise.
Okay. Yeah. Yes. Move on to future agendas. I think next meeting, Len has a letter on Connect the Coast Side, which he's planning to have on the agenda. I guess we'll be discussing our minutes process. What are other people thinking? I've reached out to CDRC to present something for us. I've also gotten requests from these age-friendly community people to present to us. So what other ideas people have?
So in April, I'm targeting a presentation on master plans in the parks.
Okay. But Dave, you had your hand up.
Yeah. So I want to have the sort of continuation of the retreat that we didn't get to, talking about processes and policies.
Okay.
And that's sort of a study session kind of thing more than anything else. It doesn't have a direct delivery. The thing is, I would like a discussion on going into hybrid meetings. More and more boards are doing that, and case rates are falling dramatically. Hopefully by the time this gets on the agenda, people are more comfortable with it. And in any case, I'm still comfortable with going to the office, but we've still never had it on the agenda. So,
yeah, no, I think that's important to put on.
Okay.
So, but Dave, the way you expressed that, I mean, the retreat, what I heard Claire say is, we'll take the listing as it was presented, itemize it there. That basically.
No. This is completely different.
No, I know. You said retreat in the phrase.
Not related to the work plan or anything else.
Well, it is. That was one of the work plan elements.
Oh, okay. If you want to look at it
exactly
that way.
Yep.
It's a big discussion. We've had a lot of questions about processes and policies that it would be better, I think, to try and have it all in a single discussion rather than ones and twos.
Yeah, well, that was a thought I had when I looked at the task list where there were like 10 rows and it just consolidated into one discussion.
Okay, so such an item on policy and procedures is a possibility. Greg, you've got your hand up.
I just want to comment on two pending agenda items. One is the issue of reducing airport noise. The group that's working on that just doesn't seem to be close to ready. And I don't see any reason for us to put it on the agenda until either they think they are or Michelle, until we have some feedback on the lead testing letter. So I would just put that on indefinite hold for later in the summer. The other issue is the sewer problem, which I've mentioned before. And that is becoming a minefield. It looks like Half Moon Bay is going to appeal the lawsuit. They're not doing anything about their wet weather storage. And I think the best way to consider that for future agenda is to have the group, and I think it was Claire, Len, and I who were working on the sewer issue. I think we need to have some background discussions about what's going on, how serious it is, and what you think is appropriate for the MCC to do. I mean, I view it as a serious issue, but I frankly right now don't know what to suggest to put on the agenda other than general education that I would present, and I don't know that that's an appropriate thing to do.
Okay.
Without participation by the agencies. Okay, so that's it for me.
Okay. Dan?
Yes. I brought up in the past the idea of an agenda item of continuing on the El Granada fire station lighting, and to have the MCC approve funding for a expert measurement of the light that is currently leaving the project, which is which is contrary to the conditions of approval. And if at that time there's other avenues of movement towards correcting the situation, you'd be open to that. But that's my thought at this point in time, to just document the light that is leaving the fire station, which is contrary to the conditions of approval.
Okay. Dan, you may want to talk with me about some of that, because I'm trying to get code compliance to come talk to us and to help us when we do get the kind of data you're interested in. What do we do with it, and how can we get them to support us? So that may be a two-pronged thing.
Okay.
Michelle?
Yeah, I was just going to add that the next edition of the MCC newsletter for spring should be coming up soon. And so I'd like to have that on the next agenda if possible.
Okay. Jill? Jill? Oh, there you are.
Sorry, I'm on an alternative tech device tonight. I went to the February 16th, I listened into the Harbor District meeting, and not only are they raising the fish prices for through enforcement of wharf fees, 10 cents a pound for sailfish and finfish, and they voted to double the price per hour of the hoist, but they also disclosed that they have a Zoom room where they can broadcast meetings on Zoom, and it's big enough for the commission and public to meet in. So they're looking at hybrid alternatives for the future. And I also think we should look for hybrid alternatives so that we can.
We did.
Sorry?
Jill, we did. We authorized it. I bought it. And
you have a Zoom room?
But we have a regular room which is suitable for Zoom.
Where is the room?
It's at the GCSD meeting room.
Okay. Do we pay for that room, or is it just
free?
Sorry?
It's free.
Free.
And is it a place that's enclosed, or it has a lot of air ventilation, or has filters, or what?
So
You'll have to go by and see it someday.
yeah, I have not been in it for a year.
Okay.
Well, 4 months, but yeah, those are all things that they're looking at. And as far as I know, the room right below it, which is the one that belongs to the Harbor District, has not done much with air filtering either. I could be mistaken, but I have not seen that on any of their agendas.
Do you think that's their Zoom room they're talking about?
It's probably that room or a smaller meeting room.
Okay. And I was leading to with hybrid meetings, perhaps we might want to formulate a letter or push for these hybrid meetings. And I'm not sure what it would take if the governor would have to be, something. I don't know what it would take, but I'm just throwing it out there.
It's fully authorized. There's
how it works now doesn't really work. I mean, the Harbor District was talking about how they have to notify the public if, say, for example, you and Len are at the Zoom room, but Greg and I are at home. Then we have to invite people into our home during the meeting. It doesn't work.
This is the content of that agenda item. When we get to that agenda item, we'll discuss.
And there are several bills in the Assembly already dealing with these issues. And right now, under the authorization we have right now, you do not need to invite anybody into your home. That's what AB 361 is all about.
Okay.
One other thing to add is if we're going to do candidate forums, I need to get on that. So it's on my list. But we have a lot of things to think about doing. At this point, maybe we'll adjourn. We have a motion.
I'd like to move we adjourn.
To adjourn?
Second.
I moved, Dan seconded. We'll call the roll. Jill?
Dan did not.
Aye.
Michelle?
Actually, Greg seconded it.
Was that Greg that said that? I thought it was Dan.
Yeah, Dan was on mute.
Okay.
I vote yes to adjourn.
Michelle's yes. Jill's yes. Dan?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Greg?
Yes.
Claire?
Yes.
I'm a yes. 7-0. We're adjourned.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.